right. Hello, everybody. Hope you all are doing well. This is DFS Army's pre-lock show where we are here to go game by game, talk through what we're doing in the DS, the slate, and then also, answer your questions, talk through your concerns. Last week was a good week. We went 3 for 2 when we're just looking at positive or negative slates. And honestly, it doesn't really matter, especially when you have one slate like we did on Wednesday that was just so dominant, but, still kind of fun to keep track of. But then, we're a new week starting fresh. It's a Monday. Weekend was pretty good with some college basketball bets that went pretty well. But let's get into the slate. Starting off, we have a 6-gamer, 7-gamer, with quite a bit of injury news and some that we're still waiting on. So it should only continue to go up. Binkin, what's up, man? Hope all is good. But starting off with the Raptors, this is when we started getting injury news nice and early today. Starting off, we have we got the RJ Barrett news earlier today. He's going to be out. Grady Dick, Chris Boucher, a lot of other guys who've been out for a while. What we like about the Raptors today is a nice high total game, 226, fourth highest or third highest on the slate. Nice spread at 2.5. And then we know that these are two bad defenses. And so you put all of that together, it makes us a little bit more interested in taking some shots here. As of right now, though, the Raptors aren't showing up in any of my lines, which is a little worrisome for me, but it makes more sense when you understand all of the value we have in some of the later games. Let me look a little bit closer at these matchups, see if there's anyone I want to take a shot on here. It's just too good of a matchup for me to ignore these guys completely. I'm going to look at Scotty Barnes' minutes first. He hasn't been seeing more than 30 minutes too often. A lot of that's because these games haven't been close. They don't have a lot to fight for anymore. But in soft matchups, like against Utah on the 7th earlier this month, he did have 50 points against a pretty good defense like Golden State and Orlando. We've seen him get above 50. It's not a spot I feel great about, but I'm willing to match the field here if no one else is going to. So I'll put an 8% min on him. Emmanuel Quickly, again, I'll put a 15% min on. Softest matchup in the world going up against the Wizards. One of these two guys should be able to get there for us tonight. Jakob, he just hasn't been that guy this season, even in soft matchups. He did have like a 50-point fantasy performance like in January against the Pelicans, but it's really hard to get excited about him these days. The minutes just haven't been there. Haven't seen him get really overly close to 30 minutes in a good bit. So with Chris Boucher getting ruled out, that should help a little bit, but he's been in and out of the lineup for a while, so still hard for me to get there given some of the better center plays we have. So I'm just going to put an 8% min on Scotty Barnes, 15% min on Quickly, and call it a day here. Other side of this, again, really soft matchup for Washington because the Raptors are horseshit when it comes to defense as well. For Washington, Sadiq Bey's out. Nothing new here, to be honest. Just a lot of the guys who've been out for a while. What we like about Washington is just the matchup. But even then, it's still I just like the Toronto side so much more. Sar is viable for me, but it's hard to get overly excited about Sar, just given some of the really, really strong center options we have on the slate. Let me look at Sar. I know Sar's been good here recently. He did struggle against the Knicks, but that was a tough matchup for him. Yeah, I'm willing to take a... Let me look at the sim model right quick. I'll pull it up. 6,400. Sar, yeah, it likes him a good bit. I'll follow it. I'll put a 15% min on him. There's a lot of really good center plays and some sneaky center options I like being over the field on, but with Sar, I'll at least match the field. And then AJ Johnson was standing out for me in the sim model as well. If he was showing up naturally, I think he's a fine value play at 4,400, but we have value plays that we're actually excited about where they have decent point per minute. They're decent point per minute players or they're just seeing a lot more minutes than they typically do at a cheaper price tag or similar. So even though I like AJ Johnson, he's not showing up in any of my lines, and I'm not going to force him in just because there's guys in better spots. It's just one of those slates where there's so much value. We have to kind of prioritize who we're going to take shots on, and he's not going to be one of those guys for me. J69, what's up, man? Jay, I told you, man. I need you to, for the process, it's pretty simple. You just follow the process. We know what the exposures are. If you ever get off of it, we'll be happy to have you, man. Not off the process completely, but just need some of your own spin. We'll be happy at that point. John, let's get it rolling. I see you, man. All right. Next up for the Timberwolves going up against the Pacers. Timberwolves are interesting, but it's really hard to even consider these guys at this point with Anthony Edwards questionable. And now he's a game time decision. So we really don't know what's going to happen. If he doesn't play, we love Julius Randle. I already like Rudy Gobert on this slate. Jaden McDaniels, we're going to see his ownership skyrocket. And Naz Reid has the highest increasing usage when Anthony Edwards is out. And so he's probably going to be, if not one of my highest owned players, probably super chalky on this slate. So that's going to make me have exposure to a guy I already like. And Mike Conley doesn't really see a boost in that situation per se, but I trust him a bit more if Anthony Edwards off the court, because I think they'll just need him a bit more. So yeah, I really like the Timberwolves tonight. If Anthony Edwards does play, Rudy Gobert is going to be a leverage play for me on the slate. So will Jaden McDaniels, as will Naz Reid. And at super low ownership and a pace up spot for them going against the Pacers, no pun intended, I really like the spot. So whether Anthony Edwards plays or not doesn't matter when it comes to who we're playing, but it does matter a lot for me when it comes down to how much, because these guys won't be sneaky plays if Anthony Edwards gets ruled out. So yeah, really like the Timberwolves. The Pacers side of this is a little bit grosser. You never really like playing guys against the Timberwolves, but it's not unheard of for these guys to go off, So Halliburton's been in great form. He's been having solid performances, even in tough matchups. He's someone I'm willing to force exposure to if needed. At 8,500, I know the sim liked him a little bit. Typically, he's someone I just wouldn't play in this spot, but when you look at his price range, there's just no one else who has even comparable upside. I know I forced a little bit of Scotty Barnes because I feel like he could in a soft matchup, but Halliburton's really kind of like your best play in like the 8 to 9K range. So I'm going to put a 19% or 20% min on him. Actually, I'm just going to do 18. Obviously, I don't love the Halliburton play. I'm just kind of following the sim on it. It's led me in the right direction more often than not. So true, J69. I'm so glad we are going to get that news significantly before lock, thankfully. And the reason why that's the case is this game locks at 7. And so as long as, we'll get the news before lock is basically the long way of saying it, or short way of saying it. Okay. Next up, we have the Lakers going up against them. And to be honest, right now, these guys aren't showing up in my lines very much. I put them in on Halliburton, so he'll show up a bit more, but they're not guys that are showing up. But one way or the other, I'll force exposure if need be to the Timberwolves if we find out Edwards is playing. So that's one we got to keep a close eye out for. And then this next game, Lakers against the Magic, is probably going to be more fun to watch than it is from a DFS standpoint. We have enough value where you can make a case for taking a shot on Luka Doncic or LeBron James at just relatively low ownership. But in a really tough matchup against the Magic, it is really hard for me to get overly excited about taking shots on these guys, especially when Luka and LeBron are both healthy. If one of them were missing this game, I'll be a bit more excited to take a shot on them. And Rui Hachimura is going to play, even though he won't see full minutes. This is just not a spot I'm looking to get creative with on this slate. Better options. One off on LeBron or Doncic, fine, but not for me. And then the other side of the game is much more interesting because the Lakers are a pretty average matchup from a defensive standpoint. Game total still low, but we have guys like Cole Anthony, and Jalen Suggs still out for this team. Similar to Friday, Paolo and Franz have a really safe floor. What worries us a little bit is at their price tag, they don't have as much upside. But because of the value we have on this slate, that doesn't really matter as much to me. Just like Friday, I want to be over the field on both Paolo and Franz. Right now, with the these guys are showing up over the field. Paolo at 41%, Franz at 26%. So over the field on both of those guys. And that's the way I want it to be. Wendell Carter Jr., I had as a leverage play. I'm starting to get a little bit more nervous about it now just because of some of the really strong center value options we have. So I still like Wendell Carter Jr., but he's volatile, and we know that. In the matchup against the Lakers, I always like playing bigs against, but I'm going to have a 5% min on him instead of the 10, just to kind of make sure I'm at least around field weight if he does have one of those high upside performances like we've seen from him before. That KCP hit on Friday was kind of crazy. Not going to lie, I was just kind of dart throw in the dark, whatever you want to say, but that hit, that was nice. I think we have better value on this slate than KCP. I think we have better value on this slate than Anthony Black, but he's viable. And that's it for me when it comes to the Magic. I want to see how much Wendell Carter Jr. I get if I get more than 5%, but I doubt I will. I'm not going to force more than that anymore. All right, next up, we have the Mavs going up against the Nets. AD, he's back. For whatever it's worth. I mean, I doubt he'll see a ton of minutes here. He's a glass cannon. You have to make sure he doesn't see too much run on his first game back. Got to be a little careful there. You would assume they would be, especially in a tough matchup at 10,200. We're not getting a discount for the risk that it would be to play him. And with AD back, I can't really look at PJ right now. Clay's too pricey for the matchup. None of these guys stand out for me. The other side of this, for the Nets, first, let's see. Do we have any injury news for Brooklyn? Yeah, D'Lo is out. Cameron Thomas is out. Those are kind of like the main guys that stand out. With D'Angelo Russell out, Keon Johnson is someone that I like significantly more than I would have. And some of the other just guard options here are slightly more viable than they were before. Cameron Johnson has been really good over the last few games, and in a really soft matchup against the Mavericks, I don't hate it. I just don't like him enough at this price tag to force exposure to him. I understand the play, though. And since I'm not forcing exposure to him, the DS is giving me like 14% naturally, so I'm going to be under the field, but at least I still have some exposure. And that's pretty much it from him. Keon Johnson's going to be a leverage play for me on this slate. He's a little pricey. We do have other value guards on this slate who, are a bit more viable, but that's why he's so under-owned at 2%. And like I said, in this soft matchup, and he's shown he has like 40-plus point upside before, even in tougher matchups. That's part of the reason why I'm willing to take a 5% shot on a guy like Keon Johnson tonight, who will see upwards to high 20s, high 30 or low 30s when it comes to DK points tonight. And then Zaire Williams, he was really good last time out. Great matchup, priced appropriately. I put an 8% min on him just to make sure he was showing up in my lines because he wasn't beforehand. Tyrese Martin, same story. Not guys that are overly trustworthy, but in soft matchups, I'm willing to force exposure to guys like this. And they're only 4K and not seeing a lot of ownership. So we'll rather have these guys when no one else does in these positive game environments. So I have a 6% min on Martin. And then, let's see, any of these other guys show up? I don't believe they will, even though they project decently well, just because of some value we have in the later games. Speaking of later games, we have the Sixers going up against the Pelicans. For the Sixers, when it comes to injury news, we have Quentin Grimes out. That was the big surprise a few hours ago. A lot of people were thinking about playing him in a really soft matchup at 9K, but now we don't have to worry about that, thankfully. The other starters are now much more viable. Kelly O is out too. So there's just a lot of solid value here from the Sixers. We've had them burn us before. It could definitely happen again. But in these spots, I'm willing to, and what I mean by this spot, really soft matchup against the Pelicans. Decent, like spread's not the best at 225, but it's not 215. And so this is a game environment I can see playing at a bit of a faster pace than it normally does without some of those players who play at a slow pace like a Zion and other guys like that. So I'm going to force exposure to Butler here. 10% min without Grimes. He's a bit more involved in the offense. We can expect that usage rate to go up a good bit. Yabusele was showing up by himself. Again, I think we have better options than Yabusele, but we know he has slate breaking upside, so I'm still going to put a 7% min on him. Justin Edwards shows up by himself, but not a ton because of some of the Pelicans players. And we all know how I feel about the Pelicans. They're not the most trustworthy. Great matchup against the Sixers here, but I don't want to forget about other guys who are still in really good spots just because one team is. So I'm willing to put like a 23% min on Edwards. Do I need to put a min on Doughton? Yep. Again, these are just guys who are going to see more minutes tonight. And really soft matchup. Great mixture for me. And if they're going to be lower owned than they were going to be originally, even better. So I'm going to keep a close eye out on their ownership because if I don't have to have 23% Edwards, I would prefer to have like 15 to 20 if that's where he's going to be from a field weight perspective. So keep a close eye out for that. Same story with Ricky Council. Ricky Council I feel a little bit better about than Justin Edwards just because he has a higher usage rate. And in a soft matchup, that's what I'm looking for. That's why I'm taking a shot on a guy like Butler and Yabusele. And then good old Chuma Okeke. He wasn't that great last time out, but in a softer matchup, I'm willing to force exposure to him here. I didn't do it on Friday because I didn't like the spot, but Okeke's interesting. He was in the running for a leverage play for me originally, but because the next three teams also have really solid center options, I'm going to stay a little calm there. All right. Now for the Pelicans. Let's get this list going. Zion is out, like I already said. CJ McCollum is out. Misi is questionable, so we have to keep a close eye out on that. And then Bruce Brown is out as well. That's why you're seeing guys like Hawkins show up a lot more than he was earlier today, even with just like the CJ news. So long story short, you're going to have a shit ton of Pelicans in your lines. Let's run through the guys who are showing up naturally. Jordan Hawkins, I have a like on him just to make sure we talk about him. He's showing up in 96% of my lines. I'm going to take the like off of him. Because like I said, he's fine. Great matchup. I don't need 90+% of him. DeAndre Jordan. Oh, we'll get there. Jose Alvarado, same story. Great spot for him. I'm going to take the like off of him. See if that makes him fall down a little bit. I'm comfortable with 60+ of these guys, but ideally not 90%. Kelly O is showing up in 25% of my lines. He should be showing up a bit more. He's in a really good spot. He's a high usage player. As long as he sees the minutes, he should get there. And we have him projected for 26 minutes, and that's pretty solid for him at 53. Good spot. Even better play if Misi gets ruled out. So maybe I'll wait to put that like on him. It's one of the later games. I don't need to. We have enough exposure to these four teams right here. I don't have to force it right now, but Kelly O's a great play, especially if Misi gets ruled out. And so just having exposure now is good enough for me. Carlo Matkovic. He is, where is he showing up for me? Another value center power forward option on the slate. 4,400. He's only showing up in about 5% of my lines. He's only projected for 25 minutes, but again, decent points per minute play. I'm willing to put like a 10% min on him just to make sure he's in the mix enough for me. Not overly passionate one way or the other, but just want to have him show up in my lines. And then your two, very solid, value options on this slate going up against the Sixers are Keon Brooks Jr. and Antonio Reeves. Let me see how much of them I'm getting naturally. Antonio Reeves is only showing up in about 9% of my lines right now. And Keon Brooks is showing up in only 1% of my lines. A lot of that, again, is because of how much Hawkins and Alvarado were showing up in my lines, but that should balance out. Even still, these guys are so cheap. I want to make sure I'm at least at field weight. I'm willing to put a 28% min on Brooks, 21% min on Reeves. Brooks, I'll be comfortable having even more exposure to. So this is another spot I'm just going to continue to refresh the DS and see how much of these guys show up, because I am not afraid of having them in my lines because of their price tag. They can go out there and do jack shit, but because they're so cheap and they're in a situation where they have a chance of having more minutes and overperforming their price tag, I would much rather have exposure to guys like this than like your 6, 7, 8K guys who are, just as volatile, if we're being honest. So yeah, really like that spot. Next up, we have the Bulls going up against the Nuggets. For the Bulls, let's see. Chicago, they are missing some guys. Trey Jones is out. Lonzo's out. Nothing too crazy here. What we like about the Bulls is they have a pretty soft matchup going up against the Nuggets. Highest game total on the slate. This is always a situation that I talk about. I'm looking for reasons to play guys here, not reasons not to. So I have a like on Josh Giddey. Sim-Auto liked him at 9,100. I usually like playing guards against the Nuggets. That's not really new, but I like it even more today. Kobe White's viable for that same reason. I'm thinking about putting him in on him. I just wish he was lower owned. And we have just some really cheap guard options. But like I said, highest total game. This is a slate, or this is a game I want to force exposure to. So I'm going to put a 17% min on White, but he is one of my least favorite plays from the Bulls. Vucevic is going to be a leverage play for me tonight. I'm going to hit this every single time. Jokic isn't playing tonight, so the matchup's even softer than it appears on paper, but the Nuggets typically aren't that scary of a team to play bigs against. At 7,600, plenty of upside. Should see a lot of run tonight. Decent matchup. 30% min on him. Like I said, gonna do that every time. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, but I feel pretty solid about that play. Herter, I feel like he hurts me every time I play him. But again, good positive game environment. Solid matchup here. I have a 10% min on him, just making sure I'm around field weight exposure. Dalen Terry would be interesting on a normal slate, but this isn't a normal slate. Well, it kind of is for this time of year. We have enough value where Terry isn't someone I'm looking to force exposure to at this point. But yeah, I like the Bulls tonight a good bit. Trendon Watford, yeah, I don't disagree. Yeah, Jay. Right now, I'm following the philosophy, forcing exposure to this last game, no question asked. That's part of why I like these guys so much. And then the Nuggets, we have been picking on the Bulls all year long, and we're not going to stop now, especially with Jokic out. It just makes me like them even more. And so Jamal Murray is showing up in 73% of my lines. Very comfortable with that. Comfortable with more than that, honestly, but 73% is appropriate. I'm not going to do anything to force more. DeAndre Jordan. So this is a situation we have to keep a close eye out on. We're expecting Jordan to start here. If DeAndre Jordan doesn't start, he's not going to be in 93% of my lines. It's going to be whoever starts instead because of the soft matchup against the Bulls. So, like I said, he's showing up in a ton of my lines right now, but this is another one of those slates we just have to keep a close eye out on that starting lineup, on the injury news, a lot of situations like that. Speaking of injury news, Aaron Gordon, 6,500. He's questionable. If he gets ruled out, there's even more Nuggets that become much better plays than they already are right now. They would increase in ownership, so they would be closer to core plays in that case, but as of right now, we can still get a little sneaky with some things. So Russell Westbrook is one of those situations. Westbrook this season has shown he smashes in these spots when Jokic is out. The price tag on him is a bit higher, so we're not getting the same value, but I still want to be double the field on Westbrook in a really soft matchup against the Bulls. He should be able to make whatever he wants to have happen here. He's typically the one who has the highest usage rate if Porter or Murray or Gordon aren't like hitting every single shot, which usually isn't the case for them. So yeah, Westbrook is someone that I really like. And then Christian Brown is someone else I'm willing to force exposure to. Again, highest game total on the slate. No Jokic. Should see a few more minutes here in this spot as well. 13% min on him. Again, I just really like the Nuggets here. It's that simple for me. I love these guys and the Bulls and the Pelicans and the Sixers. These are 2 games I'm looking to build around. And then the Raptors, Wizards, Timberwolves, Pacers are just kind of like that. Those early games that there's some sneaky spots there, but I just prefer the later games a bit more. Vucevic is too low owned for a game with that total. Everyone is on Jordan, but leverage Vucevic is my play. Exactly. I'm right there with you, Jay. He's my leverage play on the slate as well. And it's just one of those situations where I think sometimes people forget they can play 2 centers. Like, yeah, we have a lot of really good value, but don't forget about some of those guys who still have slate breaking upside. It's just one of those game theory points at that point. Darius, what's up? Said Westbrook or Murray. 1 for 1, it's Murray all day, every day. Just from like a price standpoint, 8,100. He has significantly more upside than Westbrook does. I just like Westbrook because he's a little too low owned for me in this spot. He just stands out glaringly. And even from a projection standpoint, I just think it's a little low, but could be wrong. Cedric, what's up, man? Good to see you. Good to see you. But yeah, y'all, that's this slate in a nutshell. It's an interesting one. I like it. We're still waiting on that Timberwolves news that's probably going to spin everything on its head. But like I said, if Edwards plays, there's some really sneaky plays we can look at there too. But appreciate all the support, y'all. If you all could sign up for DFS Army. If you're not a member, if you are a member, you all know there's a ton of great coaches in the Discord who can help you out. Happy to answer any questions, talk through all your concerns. But outside of that, I will see you all tomorrow. And good luck. See you later.